Good morning and welcome to another episode of a Case for Travel Tuesdays. I have with me this morning Hilary Matson, and Hilary is the founder of Yūgen Earthside, a sustainable travel booking platform, an avid traveler, and she's passionate about sustainability. She has visited over 40 countries and territories across 5 continents. Her top travel destinations are Greece for the food, and I can attest to that. That is my absolute favorite food destination. I love Greek food. And Bolivia for the salt flats. Hilary is an American living in Paris. So I should say good evening to the Europeans. So
Good
welcome,
evening.
Hilary. It's
Good
great
afternoon.
to meet
Thank you.
today.
Thank you so much. Nice to be
Good
here.
morning here.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning here. Yeah. So you launched Yūgen Earthside during the pandemic. What has this experience been like for you?
It's been really good, really crazy, a bit of a roller coaster, as you might imagine. So on the positive side, being locked in my house all day means that there has been so much time to just hunker down and work really hard on building out the website. So there's a lot less distractions because normally I would be out traveling and being social. But at the same time, it's been really busy and kind of chaotic because like COVID was exploding as I was writing my business plan. So there were a lot of kind of pivots and changes before we even got started. And now we're really in a race against time to get as many trips on the website as possible before people are vaccinated and ready to start traveling again.
And I can relate to you starting a business during the pandemic because I went to register my agency March 12th of 2020, which was right before the lockdowns hit Calgary where I live. So I can completely relate to what that is like.
Yeah, it was a bit wild.
Yeah. And ironically for us, we didn't have any travels planned for 2020 because we've been traveling a lot in 2018 and 2019. And we thought, okay, 2020, we're going to hunker down and work. So that worked out, but it certainly made it challenging and is still challenging.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Hilary, you and I both believe that the pandemic has accelerated a growing movement to travel more purposefully. And I think when borders open and people start traveling again, they're going to start traveling farther for longer. What are your thoughts on this?
I think and I hope that you're right about that. And traveling farther for longer is kind of slow travel in a nutshell, which is a big part of what we're trying to do. And so most of our trips are longer extended duration trips that are, 9, 10 plus days. In addition to that, I also think there will be some shifts to more nature-based trips, such as outdoor walking or cycling tours. Because I think we've all been kind of craving that connection with Mother Earth, being, cramped up in our houses or apartments all over the world. And I also think that there will be more traveling purposefully in terms of who you're traveling with. So traveling with a small group of friends or family and using travel as a chance to reconnect on a human level, which is one of our themes for this. But, to have less distractions and to be in a space where you can really kind of, still your mind and enjoy what the world has to offer.
Yeah, exactly. The getting back to nature, the wide open spaces, the freedom of that, people traveling in their bubbles. I think that's going to be very popular too. You'll pick your family or your friends and that's who you're going to travel with.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I've seen you suggest that companies not get bogged down in becoming perfectly sustainable, to opt for progress over perfection. And I love this. I think this is very interesting because so many people get caught up in we have to do everything perfectly. We just need to keep moving forward and take that one step at a time. So how do you suggest that companies follow that type of model?
That's a great question. And there's so many things that companies and individuals as well can do. And I absolutely live by this motto of progress over perfection because I'll be the first to admit that it's very overwhelming, everything that's happening in the world. And, you feel like you're just chipping away and that you're never going to make progress. But if you have everybody doing something, it's so much better than, being paralyzed into kind of not doing anything. So it's kind of just keep making progress. For companies, one really easy thing that I work with tour operators on, but that also I find in the ones that we already do work with, is you can have a sustainable travel or responsible travel policy. Like, think about what travel means for your region, for the activities, for the types of tours that you're doing, and have a statement, have a stance, and make it very public and easy to find on your website. And within this, I would really advise to think about what your company does today along the 3 pillars of sustainable tourism. So what are you doing from an environmental perspective, from an economic perspective, or from a sociocultural perspective? And highlight those, because travelers are becoming more and more in tune with the types of companies that they're spending their money on. You see this across all industries. So I think there's a lot of companies out there that are taking sustainable steps and they don't really know to advertise it. So tell people about it. That's the first thing. And I think also by making a public statement, it holds the companies more accountable too, to say, yay, we've actually thought about this and we do have an opinion on it. The second thing is that there's like a movement happening right now called Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency. And it's amazing. And you can do it whether you're a destination, a tour operator, an organization, a nonprofit. So tons and tons of companies are joining this. And what it means is that you are declaring that you will take action against climate change as a company. And the public declaration is just the first piece. And then within 12 months, you need to say what your actual action plan is. And I think that's another great way to say that you're really part of a bigger movement to make things better. So those are 2 kind of really easy and free ways that companies can get involved right now.
And I am seeing that a lot with operators that I work with as well. You know, their sustainability model, their philanthropy, how they benefit communities that they visit, how they give back. It's very key in moving forward. And I think in these times, your business needs one of those to be successful.
Yeah.
Now, something you had mentioned, Hilary, was the 3 pillars of sustainability. Do you want to just kind of explain those a little bit for people who don't really know what that is?
Of course. So the 3 pillars I mentioned are environmental, economic, and sociocultural. And I actually just read a fantastic blog post about sustainable safari companies in Africa. And the woman who wrote it, she has the acronym C. So C tourism for sociocultural, economic, and environmental. And it's about how can you go on a trip and see at a deeper level. So I kind of like that acronym and play on words. But for environmental actions, this can really be anything from carbon offsetting or removing your flight impact, to visiting preserved nature areas, to donating to nonprofits that are helping protect, special ecological areas, or even like using a reusable water bottle. So there's tons of stuff that you can be doing to be a more environmentally friendly traveler. On an economic level, this is really about supporting local businesses, trying to find companies that are employing locals and giving back, and also spreading out where your money goes. So getting outside of the big cities and getting off the beaten track so that the smaller towns and villages are also benefiting from the fact that you have the luxury and the privilege to be a traveler and visit their home. And then the third thing about the sociocultural, this is really about respecting and appreciating the local and authentic culture. So tapping into experiences or conversations, could even be just connecting with locals by staying at, local guest houses or eco accommodations. And you'll notice that a lot of these things overlap. Like if you stay at a local, eco accommodation, that's supporting the economy. And it's also helping you connect with locals and giving you an opportunity to see how they live their life, outside of the big cities. So those are the 3 pillars.
Excellent. And I love that you mentioned small towns, because that's my favorite thing to do, is visit small towns when we go travel, because it's a completely different cultural experience. And that's where you get away from the tourist traps, so to speak, where you get the authentic experience of what the country really is. And there maybe nobody there speaks English, and that's okay. That's okay. You're always very welcoming and happy to communicate as much as possible. I know we've had that experience where people will, it's almost down to sign language or,
charades
in order to, charades to get across what you're trying to say. It's fun. I love it. So
Yeah, I think it's nice too because there's some places that are very, very touristy, but most places in the world they weren't built for tourists. Like real people live there. And so seeing that side, peeling back that layer, I think is really valuable to actually having a better understanding of how people live and act and behave totally differently than what you might be used to at home.
Yeah, I agree. And Yūgen Earthside offers self-guided, private, and small group tours. So tell us more
That's
about that.
correct. Yeah, so these are our three tour types. Basically the three types, they have a lot of things in common. Like the group sizes will never be bigger than 10 or 12 people maximum. And in all of the trips, the itinerary, the activities, the in-country transportation, that's all planned for you, as well as the accommodations and some or most of the meals, depending on the trip type. The main difference is that the self-guided, you're not going to be escorted, so you won't be handheld. So if you're an independent traveler who just doesn't maybe want to take the time to research and do all the booking of accommodations and plan a route, that could be the perfect trip for you. And what's nice about the self-guided trips and the private trips is that in both of those cases, you can choose your travel buddies and you can choose when you travel. So I think these are going to be the first trips that come back after COVID because you can travel with your pod, choose a date where you know that you will all be vaccinated, choose a destination where you can keep track of how COVID is being managed in that destination. So that's self-guided, and then with private, in addition to picking your travel buddies and your departure date, you do have a guide. And so in this case, there are probably experiences that you either don't want or couldn't have without a guide, such as visiting a safari area or doing trekking in the Himalayas where you need a permit to access some of the trails. So those are kind of more specialized things. The other thing that guided tours are really nice for are for cultural tours, where again, you're tapping back into that human connection and that local interaction, where there might be, workshops, conversations, stories, where it has this educational aspect that you can't just get from doing something on your own. And there's a lot of similarities between the private trips and the small groups in terms of the guided and educational aspect. The only difference with small group is that you're traveling with other people. So you're not exclusively with your pod. And those are usually the types of trips where they have, 10 to 12 slots, and you, or maybe you and a partner, you buy one or two of those slots, and there's a set departure date. So there's less flexibility, but they also tend to be cheaper than the private tours because of that. So those are the three trip types.
I think it's because not one type of travel fits all, right? It's not one size fits all. So a blend is really nice. Like you had mentioned doing a self-guided, and then you can do a small group, because you're right, there are places that you can't go without having a guide. And I know, for us, when we went to Egypt, we had a private driver and a private guide. And if we would have went to those sites without a guide, it just wouldn't have been the same. We would not have understood what we were looking at when you're looking at the hieroglyphs and the stories that they tell, which when you have a guide to tell you, it makes the experience that much richer.
Exactly. And I mean, going to Egypt, or there's so many trips that are huge bucket list items for people where they're really only going to do it once. And so if you are going to spend that money on the flight and, tax the environment by taking a flight, if you're going to do all that, I think you owe it to both like yourself, but also the communities to be soaking in as much of that experience as you can. And having a guide who is a local and really knows what information to share with travelers. I think that's such a nice and special way to get the most out of these special experiences.
We just have a comment that says, self-guided is going to boom post-COVID.
I totally agree. This was one of my answers to the earlier questions. I think self-guided and private will come back first, exactly for that reason, that you're not traveling with other people, or people that you don't know, people that are outside of your family unit. With the main difference that private obviously has the guide and the self-guided is independent. So I think those two types are going to be for sure the first that come back. And I think what the self-guided trips have that's going to make them boom even more is that by nature, there are activities that independent travelers can do, which also tend to have a huge overlap with nature-focused trips. So things like hiking or cycling, where you're out in the fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
you're walking between small towns, and for the most part, you're not around any other people. So it's really easy to stay socially distanced and then, practice all the proper protocols and ideally be vaccinated before you do any of this when you do go into these small towns. So totally agree. Self-guided trips are coming back in a big way.
Yes, they will. So you support tourism-related projects in line with UN Sustainable Development Goals. How does this work?
So this is still under construction, but what I can tell you is that we are incorporated as a social purpose corporation, which means that in addition to running like a normal business, we also have social and environmental objectives. And so this means that we want to be donating a percentage of our profits to projects that will play into this concept of regenerative tourism, which is kind of like sustainable tourism on steroids. You can also think about it as really full circle tourism. So
Mhm.
sustainable travel is not just about bringing a reusable water bottle, offsetting your flights, and having local interactions, but like how can we help preserve these areas so that future generations will be able to enjoy them as well? That's where regenerative tourism comes in. And those are the types of projects that we want to be donating to. So right now, we've identified which UN Sustainable Development Goals we want to be contributing to and examples of projects. And as one quick example, there's a UN SDG about gender equality. And so a project that's related to sustainable tourism development could be something like training female tour guides so that they have a way of making a living in their country thanks to tourism.
Mhm.
So we are currently evaluating tons of companies. I don't even know how many, maybe like 30 or 40. It's a mix of local and international companies. And so we're still figuring out who to partner with first or how many to partner with. But we're really excited because it's really part of our DNA that the purpose of this company, it is a for-profit company, but it's also a social enterprise company. And we
Mhm.
want to make money so that we can help make a bigger impact and improve the tourism industry overall. So
Yeah.
more to come on this soon.
Yeah, and that's perfect. And it's, you see this, I've been seeing this a lot from companies in the industry that they're using this time to reevaluate their business plan, exactly like what you've said, how to support the local communities, how to keep these sites going. And retravel is a term that's becoming quite popular here, that let's use this time to fix what was wrong and what was broken, because it was not perfect before,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, you hear that phrase like build back better, and the tourism is hopefully changing for the future. And I always kind of warn people or catch myself that it's not a trend. Like tourism needs to change. So this isn't a trend, but it's really a movement or a pivot to, kind of starting from the foundation and building back in a way that actually will work. And I think we're at a very critical juncture where that's very easy to say, but there's also a lot of tour operators and destinations that have been struggling with the lack of tourism revenue. And I think we're all going to need to balance that eagerness to kind of stabilize with like how do we stabilize in the right way. So
Mhm.
I think we need to move ahead carefully and intentionally with this.
Yes, I agree. So travel and the human connection is so powerful. Give us an example of how your tours uh, give that local internet interaction that people are looking for.
Yeah, so we have a lot, and the types of tours that would fit into this are mostly cultural tours, where we emphasize local interactions or even hands-on workshops. And so, as a couple quick examples, we have some tours in India that have a huge focus on storytelling and actually meeting with the local artisans. So not only like will you see the Taj Mahal and check off, the bucket list thing, but then you'll actually visit artisan marble makers and stone and tile makers and see how they cut it and paint it and work with it and kind of see, the peeling back that layer. I know I've said that a few times, but really getting past that surface level of like, okay, there's the Taj Mahal, and really thinking about how did this happen? Like, who are the people that were
Mhm.
behind this, that maintain it, and pass down the cultural history and heritage of the significance of these places. So I think that the tours in India are especially incredible for that. Another example is we have a lot of tours in the Middle East that foster a lot of human connection as well. And some of these involve visiting nomadic Bedouin communities and staying with them in the desert for a night or two and camping with them. and eating with them outside. And so understanding like truly how people live outside of cities, probably many people that are traveling have are used to being in a city or a suburb. And so seeing how people
Mhm.
live off the land and live more remotely, I think that's another way to really get a cross-cultural understanding of what different humanity, different experiences of humanity. And I think that's one of the best little gems, is that travel allows us to see that and do that.
Yes, I agree. Well, Hilary, if people want to learn more about your company and find you, where is the best place to go?
So our website launched in December, so we're live. It's yugenearthside.com. Yugen is a Japanese word, so if you don't know how to spell it, it's Yugen and then Earthside. We're also on all social media platforms. So we're very active on Instagram if you're more of like a picture inspirational kind of person. We're also really active on LinkedIn if you're kind of more interested in tourism companies and kind of the business side of things. And we share really interesting and relevant articles. And then, yeah, when you're on our website, we also have a pretty well built out blog section and resources section. And so you can get a lot more information about sustainable travel just by visiting us on our website.
Excellent. And I like that you said where your name originated from, excuse me, in particular, because there is someone from Japan watching. So I'll say hi to
Hello.
Katani-san. That was really neat. I didn't know that. So I'm glad that you mentioned
Konnichiwa.
that.
I love Japan, so it's
Oh,
yes, it's very purposeful.
my son went to Japan for 2.5 months doing some volunteering, and that's who's watching, one of the people that he met while he was in Japan, and he just loved it. It was life-changing for him. So, and he learned a
As a
little bit of Japanese, so.
good. Yeah, konnichiwa, arigatou gozaimasu, biru kudasai. I learned the essentials. That
Oh,
last one just means
awesome.
beer, please.
That's awesome. That's a great way to finish off the show today. So thank you, Hilary. I really appreciate
Thank
you coming
you.
on today.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.